So we hope that you stay with us through this entire episode. What we plan on talking about is the beauty in submission. You know, submission to authority, especially if you're in leadership or just as a parent, as a father. Now we ask you to stay through the whole thing if this is something that you're interested in, because we're going to talk about the negative viewpoints and the positive viewpoints, because there's absolutely two viewpoints from anybody that you talk to, whether they're Christian, whether they're not Christian. There's a lot to unpack on this. So stick around, because I feel like there's something that's going to resonate with you. Well, good day to you, fam. This is B.
And this is D.
Bringing you the sole opinion of two everyday Christians.
I say this quite often, that I'm pretty excited about today's episode, but I really just, I can't wait to dive in and talk about what we're going to talk about today. Little different setup. So we're kind of looking weird at each other here, but yeah. Bear with us here as we awkwardly look at each other and talk to each other.
Yeah, we've got to make room for the glowy sign. It's kind of cool.
The glowy sign is awesome.
Yeah, we think it's kind of fun. Yeah. So we hope that you stay with us through this entire episode. What we plan on talking about is the beauty in submission. You know, submission to authority, especially if you're in leadership or just as a parent, as a father. Now we ask you to stay through the whole thing if this is something that you're interested in, because we're going to talk about the negative viewpoints and the positive viewpoints, because there's absolutely two viewpoints from anybody that you talk to, whether they're Christian, whether they're not Christian. There's a lot to unpack on this. So stick around, because I feel like there's something that's going to resonate with you.
And this kind of feels like too, it goes right along with men being men and leading their home. You know, I can't be weak, or I can't be Christian, because there's too much weakness in Christianity, and I've already got to, you know, submit myself to the law enforcement or the judges of the land, or however you say it. So I don't want to be a weak man. But before we dive in, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I do want to talk about our giveaways. If you like what we're doing, and we're as we grow, we hope you're growing. But if you like what we're doing, please share this channel. As like I said, as we're growing, I hope you're growing. As you grow, we are definitely going to be growing too. When we pump ourselves full of all this information, and when we're doing these kind of episodes for you guys, it's not only for you guys. Like, we know what we're talking about all the time. A lot of these actually open some understanding on ourselves. But before we dive in, please share this channel. We're on most platforms. We want to grow so we can start giving stuff away, dude.
Yeah.
We have our 500 giveaway for YouTube. That's going to be the Streamlight. We'll show it here on the screen. It'll be our Streamlight rechargeable EDC, our everyday carry flashlight, that we trust and believe in. And then we have a new giveaway on Patreon for a 25 member. It's going to be a custom bench-made knife in our color scheme. But exciting things. I'm excited. Hope you guys are too.
Yeah.
Let's get rolling.
Let's jump into it. So the scripture that we have on this one is James 4:7. Submit yourselves then to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. When we're talking about let's say a positive viewpoint where submission comes into play, is a biblical imagery of being a Christian, being a sheep, which can feel like there's both positive and negative to it, right? It feels like there's more negative to being a sheep than there is positive. I don't know how you feel about that, but that's usually how I felt over the years.
Yeah, I mean, let us also know in the comments what you guys are thinking.
Yeah.
But I like this verse because it says the very first thing, submit yourselves, comma. Okay, we kind of fly by and fly the seat of our pants sometimes when we let's say do our daily devotionals. I want to be closer to God, so I'm going to do my devotionals, but we can read that and then just fly right by it, not actually stop and absorb what the author was talking about. He said, submit yourselves, comma, then to God. So if you're not submitting yourself in your attitude, spirit, if you're not walking as a humble human being and submitting yourself, you can't even submit yourself then to God.
Yeah.
So if you can't submit yourself, then you can't do it to God. And it says submit yourselves then to God.
That's good. That's really good. And it's not a blind obedience, as it were. Just to kind of give you that negative standpoint of being a sheep as a Christian, is a lot of people will argue that a sheep implies just a blind trust. Someone that doesn't really think on their own and they just follow whatever the leader says, which is not something we want to necessarily do. We are autonomous. We're not. We have our own mind, but there is a beauty in submission and a peace when it comes to submission. If I can switch over to a positive, it builds a sense of humility and trust. Being a sheep reflects humility and reliance on a divine wisdom rather than human pride, fostering a sense of peace and purpose. And it's almost hard to fathom that if you've never truly felt or tried to be submitted yourself. But I can give you a quick example in my life where being the music director of my church, I've been the music director for, Lord have mercy, I hate to say, about 2.5 decades now. And at one point, our assistant pastor, I had a problem with him. I had a big problem with him. He felt a little on the abrasive side to me. He may not have been anybody else, but I knew what my role was. I knew what I was supposed to do. And whenever he was put in charge, when our pastor was out of town, he would come to me and ask me, hey, brother, I need you to do a couple things. I need you to put a couple of songs together, maybe find somebody to do a special song, which is something I already knew to do. So to me, I was young. I just felt like, why are you talking to me right now?
Well, hold on. And it also goes along with our jobs.
Oh, yeah.
If you drive a forklift every day, your manager's out of town, your supervisor comes up to you and says, hey, I want you to get on the forklift and I want you to move that product from point A to point B and load it in the truck. And you're like, no, really? Like, that's what I do for a living. So it's a man thing, right?
Yeah.
Like hopefully we take pride in what we do and we have some sort of gumption to do what needs to be done in a daily, even every day. But it's something as a man that you're going to deal with, period.
Yeah.
And every day you're going to deal with it with your wives. Like, hey, why didn't you take out the trash? I asked you to take out the trash. Or small things, and you're like, bro, you know who I am? Do you know who I am?
Yeah.
I can lift this much weight, dude. Say it again. Find out.
I can throw you, okay?
Right? Yeah. So that's like that's that man in us that, and it's a good thing to have. Us as men, we need to have that. We don't need to, like you said, like the positive is this, obedience is better than sacrifice kind of look on life. And it, without being there and without doing it, you will not understand. And even when you're being obedient, sometimes you don't understand, why am I doing this? This doesn't make sense, especially in the world of leadership in a church or in a church period. Sometimes it's not gonna make sense until God gives you some type of clarity or revelation down the line.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened to me. Is I was having a problem, and service after service he was in charge of, he would ask this, and then one day I don't. let's just say the Lord spoke to me. I don't know. But in my mind, I thought, how hard is it just to say, yes, sir? I mean, how hard was that? And so in my mind, I just said, Brian, click your heels together, salute, and say, yes, sir. What do you need? And literally, that's exactly what I did. I clicked my heels together. I saluted. I said, yes, sir. What do you need? And he's like, I appreciate you, brother. I just need a couple of songs, get it special together. I said, all right, I'll get it done. And how hard was that? And then I was no longer angry. I was no longer upset. I carried that kind of through the rest of the service when I wasn't quite submitted. I carried that throughout the service, and I was just angry when I was just upset. Like, man, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. He's just trying to. He's just on a power trip. Mm-hmm. That was a big one for me. He's just on a power trip, trying to tell me what to do, and it wasn't. I just realized he's in charge when our pastor was out of town. So he was dotting his I's, he was crossing his T's. He had to make sure just everything was put in place. And there's nothing wrong with that when you're in charge, right? You have to get things done. Mm-hmm. And I was almost impeding that. So when I just said, yes, sir, what do you need? Then I had a peace. He had a peace because he knew I was going to help. And I had a peace that I was just submitted. Okay, I will help you get this accomplished.
And that kind of goes along with leadership styles too. They can differ from one person to another. Our pastor, you're this now, mm-hmm. here, and he gives it to us, and he watches. He makes sure things get done, and but he lets you kind of prove your working ground. Like, he kind of steps back, and a lot of us appreciate that kind of leadership because he's entrusting in us to do the job. So it makes us kind of want to do the job more. And then I kind of fall into that. When I'm in charge of something, I tell them, hey, you're in charge of this. And I delegate, which is hard enough for men. But you delegate and you leave it, but I'll still be like, okay, how's this going? Yeah. Which, to me I feel like it's a good leadership, but at the same time it could fall into what you're feeling like, bro, just leave me alone, let me do my thing.
I know what I'm doing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But it goes along with this blind obedience thing too.
Yeah.
The secular world, or people who don't quite believe in God, or if you don't believe in God, it's kind of along the lines of blind obedience and possibly the vulnerability to be manipulated, right? We get all those, oh, you drink the Kool-Aid, or all of that, those kind of negative thoughts about Christianity or the church, or everything's a cult now, and you're gonna drink Kool-Aid one day and everybody's gonna die because you were vulnerable to being manipulated.
Yeah,
bro. That's why I have challenged myself. What I get? What was the main thing I got from the chapter or the two chapters that I read? And I do a quick synopsis, and then I that's because it sticks with me in my heart. This isn't about me and you. This isn't about you just blindly following your spiritual authority at church, or you're blindly following your pastor and just do whatever he says. Don't ask any questions.
Right.
And that's not who we are as Christians. That's not what I believe God intended for us to be. It's all about us having our own relationship and walk with God. Our pastor is there to rein us in when we need to rein in, and he's there to support us most of the time. And
he should be. I mean, if you have a good shepherd, that's what he's going to do. When he sees you just as an actual shepherd out in the field, if they see a sheep that's left or decided they're just going to go off in their own way, they go and they rein it in. And if they need to further discipline, they do. So they build dependency on the shepherd, and they guide. Because if they're alone by themselves, that's where the wolves come in, and they say, that one's by itself, I can go pick that one off. Mm-hmm. Right. So the shepherd tries to keep the herd together so that doesn't happen, which is positive and negative view. Okay. I mean, this is, I kind of I used to tend to view this as a negative thing, is when you have a sense of being a sheep, a community strength. Excuse me, I couldn't get that out.
Mm-hmm.
But submission to God and church leadership can create unity and collective strength among believers, mirroring how sheep live in a flock. That's a positive. When you're all together, you're in one mind and one accord. You can accomplish more that way. But there's also safety in that. You're not just a lone straggler being left alone to whatever wolves are going to come and attack. That can also be viewed, though, as a negative.
Yeah. So it kind of goes along with the vulnerability of sheep.
Mm-hmm.
I have a viewpoint that sheep are viewed as docile and easily led.
Mm-hmm.
So some might say this metaphor paints Christian as prone to exploitation. Mm-hmm. Like I said, kind of like we just put our blinders on and we're just along for the ride.
Yeah. You have a lot of charismatic leaders, and we could know some in the mainstream. Not to take this from you, but
no.
But there's a lot of them out there that claim to be a shepherd and have mega churches, but really they don't preach a lot of substance. They're there to get that paycheck. Let's be honest.
Yeah. And the herd dynamic, I don't know what I would do without my church family.
Yeah.
My church family has held my family, me, my wife up in prayer when I didn't deserve it. I didn't deserve prayer. There's so much love in a church family, but there's also a lot of dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But that it's kind of this, like, the secular world is like, yeah, but you guys are too dependent. It's all dependency on, it's almost like your God is your pastor, right? I've heard that.
Right, I've heard that.
And the beautiful thing about our pastor, and hopefully yours, is he preaches about this stuff. He's like, I'm not your God. Your God is your God. I am here to help, intervene when needed. I'm here to guide and lead, but I'm not your God. So that's where this dynamic of sheep, and especially I want to be careful, but the mega churches and all these churches are that you're like, yeah, I'm not going there because look, they're just out for money, and they do all these televised deals about, well, if God's going to bless you if you give a certain amount.
Right.
And that's not true. It's not biblical. Anything that kind of raises red flags about your walk with God should raise red flags, and you should look into it. Do your research. Take an hour that night and be like, man, I heard this and it really bugged me. Let's dig it out. And that's part of the problem too, is not digging things out enough and finding true understanding. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Another positive view. That's actually really good. I'm actually going to start writing down a log.
It helps. It helps me, and I can, if I'm like, man, I'll even go back and I'm kind of weird. I pray. I take a moment of prayer, asking God to talk to me through His Word, and I just flip. Flip the Word of God, open it, and I read that first chapter. 9.9 times out of 10, it speaks to me in my situation.
It's crazy when that happens.
So I don't believe in coincidence. I don't believe in any of that stuff. So I know it's God, and I know it's God leading me and guiding me, but you have to do that for yourself. I encourage you guys, just the small things. And I'm not saying what I'm doing is right or the right way, but it helps because then I can go back and look and read. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. And then I have my little synopsis of, little pea brain Danny, like write down his little pea brain synopsis about what happened. And I'm like, man, that was good, and it helps me to remember as well and get it in my heart even more.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I'm going to do that. But so another positive viewpoint is by submitting yourself and being a sheep, it gives you some moral clarity. because what you're doing is you're following your shepherd's basically his moral direction. Now again, if your man of God is following after God and the Word, then you're safe to follow that. And if you're doing that, this world is very complex. It's very polarized. So especially in today's day and age, it helps to have that moral clarity. Where are you going? What are we doing? And doing it according to what God would want.
You said polarized, which brought me to a thinking of jaded. I feel like our society just cannot trust anything.
Yeah.
And that's why so many people come into the church and have a problem with faith, is because they can't trust it. Like, okay, well, there's that argument. Oh, well, why is there so much bad things happening in the world? And there's a God, or how do I even know that God even exists? And it goes along with, okay, let's say a bid for your HVAC.
No.
9 people out of 10 people. Okay, here, I'll change it up. Okay. 4 out of 5 people. I keep saying out of 10, but 4 out of 5 people aren't just going to get one bid and go, perfect, let's go with it.
Sure. I didn't.
Yeah, we're gonna be like, okay, great. Yeah, well, I'll call you back, and I'm gonna be. I'll look around a couple other places, get a couple other estimates, because we can't trust that one person.
We don't know if that's right.
And even though we go back to that one person, be like, you know what, I want to do the work, because
we dug it out.
Yeah, we dug it out.
Yep.
We did our research. And now it's like, okay, I believe in you. I like your pricing. You may not be the cheapest, but you said some things that the others didn't about what's going on. And so you do your work. And I'm not saying it's a jaded thing, but here's this thing again. God gave us a brain.
Yeah.
And you'll hear me time and time again. Well, if you're Christian, why do you have to conceal carry? Or why are you carrying medical supplies on your person, in your vehicle at church? Or why do you carry these things? Well, because God gave us a brain.
Yeah.
God gave us certain men that have created, and thank you, Jesus, that he has given us readily available medical supplies that we can carry on a day-to-day basis. That, people don't remember the president's. You might know. You can hit me in the comments. But there was a president that his son got gangrene in his toe playing tennis out in the White House tennis court area.
Oh, really?
He got gangrene in his toe, and the infection spread so bad because they did not have antibiotics.
Oh.
They didn't have any. And after World War II, say what you want about Nazi Germany and Germany in general, but their science and everything was so far above. They were way ahead of their time, and awful things. Yeah. I'm not accounting for that, but guess who hired a whole bunch of those scientists? The United States of America.
Oh, serious? I didn't know that.
Yeah, after World War II, we took a lot of their scientists and be like, okay, well, you guys are pretty awesome in this field. Yeah, let's have you help us. So, yeah. Even antibiotic Neosporin. That would have saved this kid's life, and he died because of an infection.
Same thing with Mozart. Had they had antibiotics, he wouldn't have died of, I think it was pneumonia or something.
It's insanity. The things that we take for granted these days, including our church, including our pastor, including the Holy Ghost, including the God we serve, we take it all for granted. And we're so busy.
I'll just say just real quick, so nobody takes this out of context and cuts that one piece out and say that we're supporting Nazis. How they got penicillin and a lot of their research was horrible, because they did these experiments on the Jews. Hey, let's see what happens if we do this, and we pump them full of this, or we break an arm and see how long it takes for it to heal. Horrible things.
Yes.
So none of that we support. Unfortunately, some good things came from really bad people and situations.
Yeah.
There you go. That's all I'll say about it.
And it kind of stands to this day.
Yeah.
All the people who have money aren't probably morally the best kind of people to be around.
Maybe not. Which is so another point. And there's another thing that the negative side I'll get to on that is the positive side is a spiritual surrender, which is a positive viewpoint by being a sheep and being submitted. Submitting to God's will is seen as a path to spiritual growth, aligns with teachings about surrendering your ego for a higher purpose. Now, how much better would the world be if we surrendered our ego to a higher purpose? I mean, just as polarized as our world is today, most of it surrounds ego. Well, that I'm better than you, or my party is better than your party, or my guy is better than your guy, or whatever the case might be.
And that's going to rise up.
Oh yeah.
And just like I said in the beginning of this, it's you. This is not something that you're going to ask God, please take this away. God's going to chuckle and be like, you have to figure it out for yourself.
Yeah.
And it's always, because it's always going to pop its ugly head up.
Mm-hmm.
Right when you think, man, I feel like I'm pretty submissive.
Mm-hmm. Until
you're not submissive. If you're thinking you're submissive and humble, there's a problem.
Yeah.
So just do your best. Go along and do your best. And the Bible and submission, we always think about wives submit yourselves to your husbands as
mm-hmm.
to the Lord.
Yeah.
When is that line drawn? Well, it's drawn biblically. If that man is doing everything that he's supposed to do and he's trying to lead your family in the right direction, then you should as women, period, they don't have a problem. Oof. Okay, hold on. They don't have normal issues like men do with submission. When they do have a problem with submission, that's when us as men should look at ourselves and say, what am I doing wrong? Because it's innate in most women that they will follow. And
a leader, right?
Yeah. And if they're bucking
mm-hmm.
up against you as a husband, then you should probably look at what you're doing, what you can do better in that situation, or whatever, whether it be finances or waking up early and getting your carcass out of bed and going to church on a Sunday. It's always innate in all of us to buck up.
100%.
Right?
And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because that means you're human. That means that you want to be strong and want to be a leader, and you're kind of stubborn. Be stubborn for the right things.
Right.
That there's nothing wrong with that if it's directed in the right spot. Because the negatives to all of this being submitted, negatives to all of the sheep stuff are things like you're being vulnerable to somebody manipulating you.
Yep.
You lose your autonomy, which is not true. You are your own person. You have a mind to think, or stifling progress.
Mm-hmm.
And just because we're being submissive and we are sheep, doesn't mean that we are not that we're just adapted to traditions and that we are closed-minded to like growth, or that this says hindering intellectual or societal growth. That's not it at all. Now, there are some things in these societal growths that hinder submission, such as the modern feminist movement. I'll just say it. That's something that says that women, they don't need a man in their life to do anything, and it doesn't mean that women can't do a lot of things that men can do.
Sure.
But there's things that men can't, the things that men can't do that women can do. A lot of that is like nurturing, for example. We aren't nurturers.
Yeah, not most of the time.
No. But that's something that helps society grow, that society function. There's a lot of other things that we do when it comes to leading. That's something that women can do, but that's not necessarily what they're the best at. So we all have our place. And when we have a submitted spirit, women to wives to your husbands, and husbands to your leaders, to your man of God, for example, we can grow so much faster, so much better together.
Yeah. We from day one, we wanted to start this podcast, and we wanted to empower the Christian man. That was our push, and as we grow, you grow. But we want to empower strong men, and without men being strong in society, there is no chance that we're going to make it real far generationally.
No.
it's already scary if World War III happens.
Oh yeah.
And it's up to us, man. It's up to us carrying that burden and that leadership for our family and our sons, to see a solid father in their life.
And remember, there's a peace and a beauty in submission, not to take away your autonomy, but just following the man of God and the will of God. And there's you don't even understand. If you've never done that, you don't understand the peace and the joy of just doing what you should do and being submitted. So other than that, I think we kind of covered what we needed to. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please leave us a comment, like, subscribe if you feel like it, share it out to somebody that may need that as well. I think the world kind of needs it at this point.
Yeah.
But we'll just say, fam, we love you.
God bless.